You've put in the work. Really, you have. You've battled through complex grammar. You've built this, pretty impressive vocabulary. Objectively, you're an advanced C1 level English speaker. And yet, there's that feeling, isn't there? You feel stuck. It's that incredibly frustrating C1 plateau, you know the one, where you put in massive effort, but the result is just, oh, they seem to shrink. You can understand those nuanced conversations. You read complex articles, no problem. But actually producing that language yourself, naturally, weaving in idioms without sounding forced. Yeah, it feels like a huge uphill battle, almost like trying to boil the entire ocean just to make one cup of tea. So today, we're doing a deep dive. We're looking at a, frankly, revolutionary approach that promises to help you break free from this plateau. It's all about working smarter, not harder, really focusing on less to achieve much more.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is where this idea comes from. It's actually from a 19th century Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. He noticed this fundamental imbalance in things. Wealth distribution, land ownership, even the peas in his garden, apparently. It's a principle we now call the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore how this concept, from economics and pea pods, can genuinely be your roadmap to confident, natural English fluency.
Right, that C1 plateau. It's infamous, isn't it? And I bet so many people listening right now can relate. You're reading The Economist, maybe listening to BBC podcasts. Your passive understanding is fantastic. But then you open your mouth, or you try to write something sophisticated, especially with idioms, maybe. It just feels like hitting a wall. Why did that happen after all that effort?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's the crux of the issue. This is exactly where Pareto's principle gives us such a vital insight. That frustration you're feeling, it likely stems from, misallocating your energy, your time. You might be spending, say, 80% of your study time on activities, maybe learning obscure words or rereading grammar rules you already know that only contribute maybe 20% to the results you actually want.
Yeah.
Because true fluency, that effortless, natural, confident kind, it isn't really about knowing everything. It's about mastering the vital 20% of English that drives, 80% of real communication. It's really about efficiency, much more than just sheer volume.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective because, let's be honest, there's this pervasive myth out there, isn't there, that fluency means knowing every single word, every grammar rule, like becoming a walking dictionary. And chasing that constantly expanding horizon, that is the definition of boiling the ocean for advanced learners. You just can't learn it all. And maybe you don't need to.
Exactly. You don't need to. True fluency, instead, is about effectiveness. It's about the efficiency and the impact of applying the knowledge you have. It's not about how big your theoretical vocabulary list is, but how skillfully you can actually use the words and structures you command. So maybe we can break down what that effectiveness looks like. Let's talk about the core components of real C1, C2 fluency, what it means in the real world for you listening.
Okay, let's do that. Where do we start?
First, there's communicative competence. This is fundamental. Can you use English to achieve your actual goals in the real world? Like, can you persuade a client? Can you negotiate a contract effectively? Tell a story that really connects? Or explain a complex, abstract idea clearly? This isn't just about being grammatically correct. It's about language as a tool, a powerful one.
Right, getting things done with language. Okay, what's next?
Then there's naturalness and authenticity. And let's be clear, this isn't about getting rid of your accent. Your accent is part of who you are. It's more about mastering the music of English. Does your speech have a natural rhythm, a good flow? Do you use collocations? Those words that just naturally hang out together like a native speaker would? Like make a decision, not do a decision?
Yeah.
And when you use idioms, does it sound natural, appropriate? Or a bit forced? That subtle quality is key.
That musicality, the flow, I get that. It's hard to pin down sometimes, but you know it when you hear it. Okay, number 3.
Number 3 is confidence and automaticity. This is more the internal feeling of fluency. Can you speak without that constant, really draining internal voice translating or checking grammar rules? Does the language just sort of flow out automatically, allowing you to focus on what you want to say, not how on earth you're going to phrase it? That's what some call unconscious confidence. It's almost effortless. The language becomes second nature.
The dream state. No more mental gymnastics mid-sentence. Okay, and the last one. And finally, number 4, sophistication and nuance. This is about having that full palette of linguistic colors to paint with. Can you express really fine shades of meaning, choosing carefully between, say, assert and allege, because you need that specific legal or professional nuance? Can you structure your sentences deliberately, maybe to emphasize certain points and downplay others? This is where real precision and, elegance come into play.
Okay, that's a fantastic framework. Communicative competence, naturalness, confidence, automaticity, and sophistication. So, if we accept that fluency isn't just about knowing more stuff, but about being effective in these four ways, then the big question for this deep dive, the Pareto question, is
Yeah.
what are the vital few things? The 20% of language patterns or learning activities that give us 80% of the impact across these areas, where should we be focusing our energy, like with surgical precision?
Precisely. Let's put on our Pareto glasses and look at English. Starting with vocabulary. At the C1 level, what I call the single word trap is it's very real, just memorizing lists of isolated, often obscure words, proclivity, verisimilitude. It's often a trap because these words are like linguistic islands. They're hard to actually use naturally in conversation. They stick out.
Right. You learn them, but then you never find the right moment to use them, or they sound weird when you do. So what's the 20% here? For me, this is where it gets really powerful. Collocations. I think they might be the single most important concept for naturalness. Think about it. Native speakers don't consciously think, which verb goes with decision? Make. Their brains just automatically serve up, make a decision. Learning words in these natural partnerships, their habitats, is just the fastest way to sound more natural. So instead of just learning the word argument, you should be learning things like a compelling argument, a heated argument, to put forward an argument, even a flimsy argument.
Yeah.
Or instead of just methodology, learn a rigorous methodology, a sound methodology. So a really high impact action for you, the listener. Dedicate a specific section of your notebook just for collocations. When you learn a new important noun, actively look for its common verb and adjective partners. The Oxford Collocations Dictionary Online or the book is absolutely invaluable for this. Seriously.
Absolutely. And building on that, think about high-frequency phrasal verbs. Now, you probably know hundreds, maybe thousands of phrasal verbs, but focusing your energy on mastering the smaller subset that are used constantly in professional and academic settings, that's going to do far more for your practical fluency than learning dozens of obscure literary ones. We're talking about things like flesh out an idea, zero in on a problem, follow up on a lead, weigh in on a discussion, or boil down to the essential point. These are the absolute workhorses in many contexts.
The ones you hear and need all the time. And what else in vocabulary?
Adding to that, we have lexical chunks and signposting language. These are the sort of prefabricated multi-word phrases. They act like glue for sophisticated speech and writing. They provide a kind of scaffolding for structuring clear arguments. You only need a relatively small number of these to dramatically improve your structure and flow. Things like, on the one hand. On the other hand, it's worth noting that, having said that, or to a certain extent, from my perspective, maybe the key takeaway is that.
Right, the phrases that signal where you're going in your argument.
Exactly. So another high leverage move for you. Identify maybe 20 or 30 of these chunks that are really relevant to your specific field or the situations you use English in, and then practice using them until they become automatic, your go-to conversation starters and transition markers.
Okay, so collocations, key phrasal verbs, and lexical chunks or signposting language. This is a very targeted approach to vocabulary. What about grammar? For advanced learners, like we said, it often feels like we know the rules already. So does the Pareto approach mean finding obscure new rules, or is it something different?
You've hit on a really critical point there. For C1 and beyond, the Pareto approach to grammar generally isn't about learning completely new rules. It's much more about mastering the application of specific structures. Structures that signal advanced thinking, add stylistic flair, or achieve particular communicative effects. You probably understand the theory of these structures already. The 20% effort is in learning how to wield them effectively and naturally.
Okay, like what kind of structures are we talking about?
We'll take inversion for emphasis. It's a really powerful tool, makes your point more dramatic, more memorable. You see it a lot in formal writing and persuasive speech. So instead of saying, "We had never seen such a positive response," you make it more impactful. "Never had we seen such a positive response."
Flipping the word order.
Exactly. Or instead of, "You will not only get a discount, but also a free gift," you use inversion. Not only will you get a discount, but you will also get a free gift. It just sounds more sophisticated, doesn't it?
But it does, yeah. It adds a certain weight. What else?
Cleft sentences are another great example. These are structures that often start with what or it. They let you isolate and really emphasize a particular piece of information. You're basically guiding your listener's attention very explicitly. So rather than just saying, "We need to focus on the marketing strategy," you can say, "What we need to focus on is the marketing strategy." Puts the spotlight right there.
Or like, it was the CEO who made the final decision.
Precisely. Instead of just the CEO made the final decision, it singles out the CEO, adds clarity and emphasis.
Okay, inversion, cleft sentences, any others in this vital few grammar toolkit?
And then for More formal or academic contexts especially, mastering advanced conditionals and the subjunctive mood is key. You know the basic conditionals, sure, but really nailing mixed conditionals like, if I had studied harder, I would be a doctor now. Mixing past condition with present result shows real grammatical control. And the subjunctive, things like, I suggest that he be present at the meeting, not he is present. It's subtle, but it demonstrates a high level of precision that's often expected in formal writing or speech.
Right, those finer points that really signal advanced usage.
Exactly. These structures, inversion, clefs, advanced conditionals, subjunctive, rapasses, they are genuinely the 20% of grammar points that do a lot of the heavy lifting for sophistication. Mastering just a handful of these effectively will likely have a much bigger impact on how fluent you sound and feel than trying to review dozens of minor grammar points you basically already know.
Okay, that makes sense. Focus on application, not just theory. Now, pronunciation. This is a big one for many learners. The common approach, or misconception maybe, is to obsess over perfecting individual sounds, like getting the sound absolutely perfect. And while that's not unimportant, is that really the best use of time at this level? It often feels like 80% effort for maybe only 20% return, especially if you're already intelligible.
You're absolutely right. That's often a low-leverage activity once you've reached a certain level of clarity. The real secret, the 80-20 of pronunciation for advanced learners, almost always lies in prosody. That's the overall music, the rhythm, the string patterns, the intonation of the language. This is what truly makes you sound natural and clear. It's often the most overlooked aspect.
Prosody. Okay, break that down. What's the most important part of prosody?
Sentence stress is probably paramount. Number one. In English, we just don't stress every word equally. It sounds robotic if you do. We tend to stress the content words, the nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs, the words carrying the core meaning. And we glide over the function, words, prepositions, articles, auxiliary verbs. Getting this rhythm right, stress, unstress, stress, unstress, instantly makes you more intelligible and sound much more natural. Think of a simple question. What do you want to do this evening? The emphasis falls naturally on want, do, evening, not on what do you do this. That rhythm is crucial.
Right, the da rhythm of English. Okay, what else falls under prosody?
Thought groups and chunking. Native speakers don't usually speak in one long, continuous stream of words. We speak in chunks and thought groups with very slight pauses between them. Grouping words together logically like this makes you much easier to understand. And it gives your speech that natural cadence, that flow. For example, as far as I know, the meeting has been postponed until next Tuesday. Those little breaks, they help the listener process.
Like natural punctuation for spoken language. Makes sense.
And then, of course, there's intonation patterns, the melody of your voice as you speak. It conveys a huge amount of meaning and attitude. A rising tone at the end of a statement can signal a question or maybe doubt. A falling tone usually signals certainty, completion. Mastering just the basic tunes of English questions, statements, lists, that's vital for clear communication.
So sentence stress, chunking, intonation. If that's the vital 20%, what's the single best activity to improve it? Forget drilling the sounds in isolation.
The highest leverage activity, hands down, is shadowing. Find a short audio clip, maybe 1-2 minutes of a native speaker whose accent and style you admire. Listen to it repeatedly. Get the sound in your head. Then try to speak along with the recording, mimicking their rhythm, their stress patterns, their intonation, their prosody as closely as you possibly can. Don't worry so much about individual sounds at first. Focus on the music. This is the fastest way to internalize the natural flow of spoken English.
Shadowing. Okay, that's a very concrete action. So we've got Pareto applied to vocab, grammar, pronunciation. But theory is one thing. How does this actually look in practice?
Great question. Let's look at a few real-world examples. C1 learners who consciously use this 80-20 approach to break through their specific plateaus. These stories really bring it to life.
Excellent. Who's first?
Let's start with Elena. She's a Russian diplomat working in Brussels. Her English was, technically very correct, good grammar, good vocabulary, but people described it as a bit bookish. It lacked that subtle diplomatic nuance you need for real persuasion in those high-stakes meetings. She felt she wasn't as influential as she could be.
Okay, so her bottleneck was that sophistication and communicative competence in a very specific context. What was her vital 20%?
She identified her vital 20% as only the language of negotiation and polite disagreement. She made a conscious decision to strategically ignore vocabulary related to hobbies, pop culture, technology things irrelevant to her immediate professional goals.
Strategic ignorance in action. Okay. What did she do?
Her key actions were very focused. She created specific lists of hedging language phrases like, it would seem that, one could perhaps argue that, to a certain extent.
Hmm.
She drilled modal verbs might, could, would, specifically for politeness, turning direct statements into softer suggestions. And crucially, she started shadowing interviews with very experienced diplomats she found on YouTube. She wasn't just mimicking words, she was mimicking their prosody of disagreement. That gentle, falling intonation they use for polite disagreement. And maybe a slightly raised pitch for offering a counter-argument subtly.
Wow, that's incredibly specific. The prosody of disagreement
Yeah.
and the outcome.
The outcome was quite dramatic. Within about 3 months, colleagues noted a change. She was perceived less as just someone reporting information and more as a skilled facilitator and influencer in discussions. Her language now had the nuance it needed.
Fantastic. Okay, who's next?
Let's take Kenji, a Japanese software architect based in Tokyo. His technical English, reading, and writing specs was impeccable. But in project meetings, things often got bogged down. He struggled to articulate complex technical roadmaps clearly and confidently to mixed audiences. His meetings weren't as efficient as they could be.
So his bottleneck was more around communicative competence and maybe confidence in that specific setting. What was his 20%?
His vital 20% was the very specific language of project management and technical leadership within his company's culture. So his actions. First, he curated an Anki flashcard deck containing only the 50 or so most common tech industry phrasal verbs and idioms frequently used in his company meetings. Things like drill down into the requirements, touch base with the QA team. Let's circle back to that later. Put that feature on the back burner.
Right, the everyday jargon of his workplace.
Exactly. Second, he analyzed recordings of presentations given by senior architects he admired, not just for content, but for structure. He adopted their typical structure of explanation, using the specific signposting language they use to guide listeners. And he started a daily ritual. Just 5 minutes of recording himself on his phone, explaining a technical concept out loud. He'd listen back, identify accurate phrasing or hesitations, and re-record until it sounded smooth and confident.
That daily practice, even just 5 minutes, sounds key. The result for Kenji.
His meetings apparently became models of clarity and efficiency. He could articulate complex ideas much more fluidly, which boosted his confidence, and he was soon recognized not just as a great coder, but as a genuine technical leader.
Another great example of targeted effort. Okay, one more.
One more. Isabella, a Brazilian academic in São Paulo. Her problem was different again. Her research was strong, but her papers kept getting rejected by top-tier international English language journals. The feedback often mentioned things like lacking academic weight or the writing feeling unnatural. Very frustrating.
The dreaded unnatural feedback. So her bottleneck was sophistication and natural.
Her vital 20% was decoding and mastering the very specific linguistic conventions of academic English writing in her particular field. She basically treated published papers in her target journals as linguistic data.
Okay, how did she approach that?
Her key actions were, again, very focused. She identified recurring grammatical structures common in her field, like nominalization turning verbs into nouns. So instead of we analyze the data, writing an in-depth analysis of the data was conducted. She also focused on the appropriate use of the passive voice, which is common in scientific writing, creating specific drills for herself. She built a personal lexicon of academic power phrases relevant to her research, things like a robust theoretical framework to provide empirical evidence for these findings suggest that. And maybe most powerfully, she chose 3 published papers she really admired as mentor texts. She would literally rewrite paragraphs of her own work, trying to mimic the sentence structures and the specific collocations used in those successful papers.
Wow, that's deep deconstruction and reconstruction, the outcome for Isabella.
Her next submitted paper was accepted for publication in a high-impact journal. Mastering that vital 20% of academic writing conventions made all the difference.
Those are brilliant stories. Elena, Kenji, Isabella, all facing different C1 challenges, but all breaking through by applying that 80-20 focus.
Exactly. They stopped trying to improve everything and zeroed in on the few things that would make the biggest difference for their specific goals.
So for everyone listening now feeling inspired by this, how do you actually apply this? How do you figure out your 80-20 and put it into practice?
Okay, this is where theory meets action. It requires a disciplined, kind of strategic approach. I think we can break it down into 4 key steps, tailored specifically to you.
All right, let's walk through them. Step 1.
Step 1 is conduct a fluency audit. And this requires maybe uncomfortable honesty with yourself. Where does your English consistently let you down? Be specific. Don't just say speaking. Is it spontaneous conversations where you freeze up? That points towards automaticity being your bottleneck. Is it professional emails or reports where your writing feels too simple, lacking impact? That suggests sophistication is the issue. Is it contributing effectively in meetings, interrupting politely, disagreeing constructively? That's communicative competence. Or is it maybe just a general feeling that even if you're grammatically okay, you just don't sound right? That points towards naturalness, probably related to prosody or collocations.
So the action here is self-reflection. Identify the biggest pain point.
Exactly. Your action for this step.
Right.
Write it down. What is your single biggest fluency bottleneck right now? That becomes your primary target.
Okay, I've identified my main bottleneck. What's step 2?
Step 2, define your vital few inputs. Based on the bottleneck you just identified, what are the absolute highest leverage activities, the 20% that will directly address that specific problem? So if your bottleneck is automaticity, your vital 20% is probably daily active speaking practice. Record yourself talking for 2 minutes on a random topic, no pausing. Shadow native speakers. Find a language exchange partner and just talk, talk, talk. If your bottleneck is sophistication, especially in writing, your 20% might be deep analysis of mentor texts in your field. Deconstruct their sentences. Master the specific grammar structures like inversion or clefs and the high-level collocations they use. If it's communicative competence for specific situations like meetings or presentations, your 20% is probably targeted role-playing. Practice negotiating, practice persuading, practice giving feedback. Maybe even write out and reverse short scripts for common scenarios. And if your main issue is naturalness, your 20% has to include a heavy focus on prosody and collocations. Shadowing becomes non-negotiable. Building and reviewing that dedicated collocation notebook is essential.
Right, so you tailor your high-impact activities directly to your specific weakness. Got it. Step 3.
Step 3 is possibly the hardest, but also the most liberating. Embrace strategic ignorance. This means consciously, deliberately deciding what not to do. You need to release yourself from that pervasive language learner guilt, the feeling you have to consume and learn everything.
Permission to not do things. I like the sound of that.
Exactly. Give yourself permission to not learn every single new word you encounter, especially if it's not directly relevant to your core fluency goals right now. Stop doing generic grammar exercises on rules you already understand perfectly well in theory. If you know how the present perfect works, you don't need another worksheet on it. And critically, stop passively consuming English media. If you decide to watch a movie or read an article, do it with an active, specific goal related to your bottleneck. Like, I will watch this scene and shadow the actor's lines. Or, I will read this article and harvest 5 new collocations related to my field.
So the action for step 3 is almost the opposite of a to-do list.
Precisely. Your action here. Create a stop doing list. Seriously, write it down. What low-impact activities are consuming your time? This list is just as important, maybe even more important, than your to-do list.
Stop doing lists. Love it. Okay, final step. Step 4.
Step 4. Track outputs, not inputs. This is a crucial mindset shift. Stop measuring your progress by hours studied. Start measuring it by competence achieved. Let me give you an example. Your old goal, based on input, might have been, I will study English for 1 hour every day. Fine, but what does that actually achieve? Your new goal, based on output, could be, by the end of this week, I will be able to explain the core argument of my latest project in a clear, compelling 3-minute monologue without hesitating more than twice. See the difference?
Huge difference. One is about time spent. The other is about a specific measurable skill you can demonstrate.
Exactly. This output-oriented approach forces you into the kind of deliberate practice that actually moves the needle on real-world fluency. It makes your practice purposeful.
Okay, so the 4 steps. Audit your bottleneck. Define your vital few inputs, embrace strategic ignorance with a stop doing list, and track outputs, not inputs. That's a very clear action plan. You know, the journey to advanced English fluency really is a marathon, isn't it? But it feels like for so long, the advice has just been run harder, do more.
Yeah.
The Pareto principle seems to offer a much more intelligent, definitely more sustainable, and ultimately probably a more effective path forward. It really teaches us that mastery isn't about knowing absolutely everything like some kind of encyclopedia. It's about strategic focus.
Absolutely. By identifying and focusing on that critical 20% of vocabulary, of grammar, structures, of pronunciation, features, the things that power 80% of effective natural communication, you really can transform your learning. You can escape that frustrating cycle of putting in huge effort for tiny returns. You can start making palpable, noticeable progress again. And it's more than just a learning hack, I think. It's a fundamental shift in mindset. It's the moment you stop being just a passive student of English, dutifully collecting linguistic facts, and you become a strategic user of English, someone who wields the language purposefully as a powerful tool to achieve your specific goals in the world.
Becoming a strategic user, not just a student. I like that framing. So the final thought for everyone listening. Take a really honest look at your current learning routine. Ask yourself those hard questions. Where is your energy actually going? What activities are truly moving the needle? What is your vital 20%? Stop trying to boil the ocean. Find your vital few. Focus your precious energy there with surgical precision, and take that final, decisive step into the world of truly effortless, confident fluency.